our first panel discussion about MT. So MT is a hot topic in our industry for quite some time. We're discussing it every year, and more and more insights coming. And today we'll be also discussing a topic about machine translation quality, quantifying the unquantifiable. And the moderator of this panel discussion is Pavel Doronin, product lead at Intento. Pavel, are you already with us?
Hi guys, I'm here.
Here you are. Nice jacket. How are you doing?
This is one of my conference jackets, 2020 collection, yeah. I also have a surprise for you, Max, especially. You see, I came prepared.
Good, good. Pavel, I miss you, you know this. Okay. So unforgettable 2020. And who we have as panelists today? Let's introduce them.
I will introduce everyone. Just do not spoil my my moderation. So yeah, should we start, right, Max?
Yeah, we can start. So and I will just remind to our attendees, guys, share with your network that Log from Home is live now. We want to have more attendees, and especially for this panel discussion, it's really hot. Okay, I see panelists join us. So Pavel, giving the mic to you, and yeah, we'll be waiting for questions in Q&A, and we are all ears to listen to you guys.
Thank you for the mic, Max. I missed you too. And yeah, you look great, by the way. So yeah, hi everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion, to the first panel discussion on machine translation quality. I hope to say this century, but no. So quantifying the unquantifiable. Yeah, I also learned how to pronounce it without any interruptions. To manage your expectations, from the discussion, we're going to focus mainly on the business perspective of this topic, and a small housekeeping note. So repeating Max, you can leave your questions right here, probably here in the chat box, and we try to reserve some time to answer them. If we don't have a chance to do that, we just kindly invite the panelists to the chat for further discussion. So yeah, let me introduce just myself. Obviously, not everyone missed me, and most of the people probably see me for the first time. Yeah, so I'm Pavel. I'm a product manager at Intento, a hub for machine translation and AI services. And what you don't learn from my LinkedIn profile is that my photo has been featured in both Multilingual magazine and Rolling Stone magazine. Yeah, and please meet the panelists, the true experts in machine translation and in the translation world. Let's start with Ana. Ana Zareska is a senior machine translation implementation specialist at TransPerfect. But what you don't learn from her LinkedIn profile is that once she took a course in Catalan delivered by a native Catalan speaker while she was studying general linguistics in Moscow, Russia. And 10 years later, when she moved to Barcelona, or how do you pronounce Barcelona, to join TransPerfect, she could surprise her local colleagues by the fact that Catalan is being taught in Russian universities, and probably by the perfect pronunciation, right, Anna?
Not so perfect, but yeah, hopefully not too bad either. Thank you for the introduction.
Glad you're here. And let me also introduce Luna Liu. She is Localization Program Manager at Alibaba Group. What you don't learn from her LinkedIn profile, that she wrote stories and posted them online. So far, she gathered 31 readers, and Luna claims they're mostly family and friends. And she also mentioned 2 cats who probably asked her to read her stories aloud. Luna, you have now the opportunity to grow your reading audience, and I'm also glad you're here.
Thank you, Pavel, for the introduction. Yes, I really hope you can meet my cats. Actually, they're really cute. And thank you, everyone, for attending this meeting. I hope it all goes well. Thank you.
Thank you, Luna. And yeah, you're wondering who is this handsome guy in the on my screen in the right top corner. Finally, this is Kirill Soloviev, the co-founder and CEO of ContentQuo, a product for quality management, should be the topic of the discussion. What you don't learn from his LinkedIn profile, that instead of languages, Kirill takes in his spare time, of course, he picks up new musical instruments and learns how to play them. He has been spotted playing things like guitar, ukulele, mandolin, drum set, handheld percussion, Irish tin whistle, and a lot of things. He sent me a very long list. I will not read it. But honestly, he never gets so far though you just don't ask him to play in front of you unless you're his close friend. And Kirill, I'm not asking you to play today, but this day will come, believe me. I'm glad you're here too.
Thanks for the intro, Pavel. You forgot my favorite instrument as of late is the Irish transverse flute. I wanted to actually bring it with me into the camera, but Smartcat didn't let me. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, Kirill. And yeah, you see, we have a group of world-class professionals and bright personalities, what is important. Let's get back to the topic. I just give a very wide context of this topic so that we can start our discussion. So historically, people do not trust machine translation, even now in 2020. And they're questioning machine translation quality, and they think human translation is better, which is a fair point. And yeah, clients, post editors, language companies, all of them are more or less biased towards machine translation. On the other hand, the reality is so that the world is moving so insanely fast, and the lifespan of the content is shrinking. And actually, it turns out that purely human translation might not always meet modern business needs. And the example of from Robert from the previous presentation actually kind of proves that. So companies are investing in machine translation technologies, implementation of machine translation, and some companies at some moment even start talking about machine translation, human translation parity. So how we can measure that, and the thing is how to talk numbers, and if we talk numbers, what numbers should we talk? This would be the topic of this discussion, and everything is built around expectations from machine translation quality under different angles. That is why we invited representatives from different areas of the translation industry, translation buyers, language companies, technology providers, so to give the wider perspective. So let's start probably with Luna, because Luna represents a product company that is actually a translation buyer. And just to start shaping a context, can you give us an overview what role machine translation plays in Alibaba business in general, and how machine translation quality in particular impacts Alibaba Group business?
Hi, everyone. I want to make sure everyone can hear me okay, because I just read it on the conversation window. Okay, great. So hello, everyone. My name is Luna, and I'm from the Alibaba Translate team, localization program manager in charge of the machine translation quality and user experience evaluation program. Actually, Alibaba is using and developing machine translations to translate the large volume products selling on the Alibaba platforms. The team actually spent a couple of years to develop and then continuously optimize the customized quality and the experience evaluation mechanism. We perform quality and experience evaluations regularly, actually monthly, to monitor the performance of our machine translation. So for Alibaba Translate, the goal is to continuously improve the machine translations, so it makes the users feel comfortable and confident about what they read on the platforms. So I have to say what we care most is the user's experience, how they feel about the content and what they like or dislike about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Luna. And yeah, a kick-off question to Ana. How does it look like from language companies' perspective? Do companies like Alibaba Group share their plans and expectation, the impact of machine translation with you guys, with language companies?
Yes, well, yes, of course. So, of course, obviously, machine translation quality is one of the most important things for us. TransPerfect has been providing machine translation services for many years now, and this includes, post-editing or machine translation tools. And of course, we need to stay competitive in this actually very competitive field, because nowadays there are a lot of companies that provide the service. There are also, as you know, MT systems that are available for free. And that's why we constantly monitor our quality, benchmark it against other systems that are available out there. And apart from that, we also work on improving the systems while they are already in production. So we want to not just, provide the quality that we can, but also make sure that the experience of our clients is also improved on an ongoing basis. And in terms of quality expectations in general, I would also distinguish two things. One is, does the machine translation quality really help you achieve your goal as a customer? And another thing is, in the post-editing scenario, does it help the translators be more efficient, right? So this is about minimizing the post-editing effort. But yeah, I mean, the bottom line is that quality is very important, and this is actually one of my main tasks at TransPerfect.
Thank you, Ana. And yeah, we say customer expectations and user expectations. And Robert mentioned they measure number of feedbacks they receive from their website. But generally, Kirill, you probably work with your technology as a bridge between language companies, end users, translation buyers. What do you think, what would be the right approach to measure it, and how much data do we need to measure it, and what are the approaches? And do you think there are some approaches that Luna and Ana should use because they're better, but they don't do that? Can you give us an overview of that?
Sure. I would love to. Just this morning, I was talking to somebody not working in the translation industry and actually trying to explain what we do with translation quality and why the hell companies try to measure that at all and why is it useful. So I think specifically with machine translation, and also trying to bridge what Luna was saying with what Ana was saying, the ultimate measure of quality in translation for me, and I used to be a buyer of translations before, but also worked as an LSP. So the way I see it now, the ultimate measure is, does the translation achieve the impact for which it has been commissioned? In case of Alibaba, machine translation is brought into existence to help Alibaba sell more products to an international customer audience, right? Or help people buy more products, depending on how you want to phrase it. And that is actually the ultimate measure of whether your machine translation quality is good enough. Anna was referring to that as well by saying that they're trying to achieve their goals with their machine translation. So I would call this type of quality metrics the outcome metrics. Does it do what we wanted it to do? Can people make buying decisions and positive buying decisions from us as Alibaba with the sort of machine translation that we provide? And if the answer to that is yes, which means our conversion rate for, I don't know, Spanish-speaking markets is at least the same or even above than it is, let's say, for the Mandarin speaking markets or other Chinese languages, then MT is high quality. And if we're below the bar, the MT is low quality. However, the problem with the sort of outcome metrics is kind of easy to see when you start thinking about it. They are only available after the fact. So they are what we call lagging metrics. You actually have to publish your piece of machine translated content to figure out whether it does its job or not. And even after you publish, you need to wait for quite a while before you can gather enough data on the outcomes. Do people buy this, this object with this level of quality of machine translation on the description? Or is the conversion rate lower than we've seen on the source language, right? So because of that, because of those outcome metrics, taking a very long time together, we actually kind of have to use other things, right? And Luna mentioned this as well. So it's not only about the experience. Yes, we want to get there, but we also have to look at something that we can measure earlier in the process of producing MT, that we can measure faster, we can measure cheaper, and try to predict using quality as a predictor to try and inform the next step. Will the outcome likely be positive if we have reached this level of quality measurement or not? So that's kind of the overall dichotomy. We want to get the perfect result with our MT quality, but we also want to learn about this as early as possible, preferably before we publish MT. And that's why we also have a plethora of approaches to actually measure the quality of machine translation, but we can talk about those in more detail a bit later.
Great, thank you, Kirill. When you talked, I was wondering, for example, Anna, do you have actually access as a language company to outcome measurement? Because most language companies, they work as a black box, you know, they provide services, but they don't have access to the last mile. I don't know if you have some challenges in this regard.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we don't have the access to default by default, but for example, to our clients, you know, conversion rates before and after we implement MT. But of course, what we can do and this is also our responsibility to explain our clients how best to measure the MT quality. And here I totally agree with everything that Kirill just said. So of course this is a collaboration, right? The client can share with us their results. Based on that, we can improve if needed and so on. And yeah, I mean, our role is basically to advise on how to approach it best, because not all clients know in advance how they're going to actually evaluate the results when they come to us for a machine translation solution.
Okay, thank you. And Luna, do you, how closely do you work with your language providers, with language companies you work with? In what part of the success do you share with them? Do you give them feedback? How does it work? Or do you listen to their advices, or do they make sense to you?
Yeah. Actually, as mentioned before, we perform both quality and user experience evaluations on the machine translation. Of course, before we publish those machine translation online, as Kirill just said, because it's senseless if you are evaluating the quality and the results is already online. So we actually do this before we publish those outputs. And for quality evaluations, we mostly, of course, work with external vendors, you know, LSPs and freelancers. It's very important to make sure the external resources fully understand our customized evaluation rules and perform the tasks correctly. And sometimes the vendors actually give us very good feedback about what they don't understand about the mechanisms, or if they think something is not practical in those mechanics. And we are always happy to listen to those feedback and see what we can do to improve the whole system. We actually we also provide tools, online tools, to our vendors so they can work online with our evaluation tasks. And sometimes the vendors also give us advices about if they see something is not working in those online platforms, and our team is always happy to receive those feedbacks and see what we can do to improve our tools as well, to make it easier for the evaluators to work with us. Yes.
Speaking of tools, it's actually interesting. From one side, we have customer feedback. It is in form of, I will not buy this item because I don't understand. On the other hand, there is academia, and they have their own ways to measure machine translation quality, like blue metrics and all these things. And probably Ana and Kirill, you are in the middle between two worlds. How to map this feedback from the business to the approaches, how to evaluate quality in the way, what numbers are to talk to.
Right. I'll give a very brief intro, and then I'll pass it on to Ana as a real MT practitioner. That's okay. I just wanted to emphasize this subtle but very important difference based on what Luna was saying. Yes, we have the user experience metrics, right? And yes, we can get feedback from our customers on how good or bad our translators are. But in the grand scheme of things, this is actually slightly less important than you might think, because in a commercial setting, the only real measure of quality is whether they actually buy this or not, and whether they have reported issues in the quality of your MT or they didn't. This is a secondary level metric, right? So outcome lies, and behavior lies one level above what people say, right? And I think it's an important distinction to make as we build up this chain of measurement approaches. Yes, of course, we all have to care what our customers say, but we also should observe what they do, because it's their actions that actually influence our company's top line in the short-term perspective, that is. And then user experience and user feedback comes after that. And then we go into the weird and wonderful domain of actually crunching numbers, which I would love Ana to talk more about if she can.
Right. So one thing that I actually wanted to mention is that I'm really impressed with what Luna just said about their evaluation methods. I see that you have very well-planned methodology, and the way you outsource the evaluation to other vendors and so on. So not all of our clients or all of our MT users have this level of proficiency, you know. And yeah, I definitely agree also with what Kirill said. In terms of MT evaluation and the data and the methodology, I'm completely convinced that there is no one way to evaluate MT, right? And our clients often come to us asking to provide such recommendation and say something like, well, do you have some kind of standard way? And usually the answer is no, because there is no standard way. It always depends on your goal. But it's interesting that, Pavel, you mentioned academia and the methods that are used in academia and the practitioners, because they don't always correspond, let's say. In my opinion, we as practitioners have to look into research for best practices, of course. However, it's not always possible. So if you look in the latest WMT evaluation method, so this is the conference, the main machine translation conference, right? They are very thorough and they're very time consuming and costly. Of course, practitioners like us, we cannot always resort to these methods, especially in urgent production scenarios. So we have to find a balance always. but our methods should always be based on what we see in research. This is something that I'm definitely convinced about. But on the other hand, of course, we always try to minimize cost for such evaluations.
Absolutely. As they like to say, it's good, it's fast, or it's cheap. You can pick any two, right? But you cannot pick on three. So what we've seen working with companies like, the likes of TransPerfect and the likes of Alibaba, helping them power their quality evaluation programs for MTE here at ContentQuo, is that there's one thing in common. No single company that ContentQuo has been deployed at only uses one way to evaluate MT. That's completely not feasible. Instead, what we see is that they all have at least 3 different methods they use from very different categories. One is what, Basha, I think you have been referring to when you said academia. These are the automatic metrics for machine translation quality. They are fast, they are cheap, but they're not good. They're not really that predictive of how a human perceives them. So this is why all of the companies using automatic metrics also pair them up with human evaluations, right? And there are two ways, again. We can have a balance between good and fast and cheap, something like adequacy fluency measurements, where we would get high-level feedback from a translator on a piece of translation produced by the MT engine. They don't need to spend as much time. We have a general idea of what's working and what's not, but it's not super detailed. The upside, of course, is that also it costs much less. So like Anna was saying, it's usable in a practical setting where you have deadlines, where you have budget constraints, and so on and so forth. So this would be the second layer of those evaluation techniques. And then the last ones, like the heavy hitters. So this is for when you need to figure out each exact thing that has went wrong in a piece of machine translation output, meticulously document it, categorize it, make sure that you record the big problems separately from the small, tiny problems, right? This type of approaches usually revolve around error annotation, invaluable for debugging problems, but absolutely impractical to be used on a daily basis, right? So usually it's about combining those 3 approaches in creative ways and balancing your budgets, your team, your efforts along those 3 axes, right? Going from good and fast and cheap and trying to make the right balance across at least 3 evaluation techniques. And there is more, of course, than 3. These are just the most popular ones we see at ContentQuo.
Thank you, Kirill. Luna, does it correspond with the vision at Alibaba Group? Because you mentioned you have some internal technologies and you also own a machine translation engine. So your internal one. How do you work? What is your approach? Do you also use a combination of evaluation approaches or something else?
Yes, exactly as Kirill just said, we use actually automatic evaluations to get the blue score from the engines. It's automatic score. It's not that accurate. That's why we're also using human evaluations for quality evaluations. We use those skilled linguists who can evaluate our machine translation and give them scores, so we know if the translation is good or not. And also, as I mentioned, we are also doing user experience evaluations. For those programs, we don't require the evaluators to acquire any special skills. As long as they're real users in our target markets, we just ask simple questions so they can let us know what they like or dislike about the translations and see if they can give us any insights about what we can do to further improve our content on the platforms.
Are they actually active in this regard? I mean, do they actively leave feedback and feed you with insights, or is it just a side activity that is just an extension of your internal team?
Yeah, we actually run those programs regularly. We post both the quality and the experience evaluation tasks on our crowdsourcing platforms. And I have to say that if you are interested, please feel free to register with us. And if you would like to know more about what we are doing, please feel free to follow the official Alibaba Translate LinkedIn page. Yeah.
Awesome. I would like to try that myself, and I will definitely take up the opportunity and see whether there's any good feedback I can provide. I'm a regular customer of certain services provided by Alibaba.
Great. So glad you met on this panel discussion. But the question is still open. Okay, the customers, for example, this last mile end users, they're not professional reviewers. They probably have no idea about adequacy, fluency, anything else. And also you have another layer where the customer of machine translation in the global enterprise is not the end user, not the buyer, but probably, let's say, if Alibaba Group has a Japanese office or a Korean office, you probably also use machine translation to speed up the conversation inside the company, and they have another level of expectations. It's not the act of purchase, but the act of the message transmitted and so on. And the recipients are also not professional reviewers. They can say, I do not understand the email or the chat message. What is actually, what would be the approach, probably question more to Ana or to Kirill, to transform this feedback into something meaningful so that you can do something with it?
I think that it's not only about transforming the feedback, but it's more about the way of collecting it, the way you actually ask this question. So I know that on some websites you can have something like, are you satisfied with this translation? Yes, no. Or rate the quality of this translation. So if you want feedback that's more meaningful or more granular, this question has to be formulated in a way that the data that you collect is actually useful, right? So of course, if the evaluators or the users that provide feedback are not trained on this, or there is no way you can just educate all the users and all the evaluators, then it's the only way, I believe. But maybe Kirill will have more input on this.
Great topic. I feel we could talk about this for hours, really, and we don't have that. Here's the deal. So we talked about those like different levels of getting information about MT quality, and one key concept that Anna was talking about is something that we call resolution or granularity here at ContentQuo. So some metrics give you a directional idea of whether it's good or bad, but don't help you in any way to proceed in figuring out where the exact problem is, and even less so how to actually fix it, right? So this is the most delicate and careful balancing acts we have seen in any MT program. You need to invest as little effort as you can to figure out whether things are good and bad, and actually drill down to the core to find the root cause. Why is it actually going wrong, right? Why is my MT output not better, right? Why is it making mistakes, right? So you want to be as efficient as possible. As Anna was saying before, there are always practical considerations, by budgets, timelines, when going from this thumbs up or thumbs down thing, very low granularity, very, very low level of detail, to the exact place in the sentence translated by MT that the user felt is incorrect. But the path you take to get there, and actually the path you take after that, once you found the exact place that was causing problems, how the hell do we train the machine to avoid it? This is probably a more difficult question. And that's like, that's a larger challenge in front of anybody who is managing quality of anything, right? It's just one part of the job to find out how exactly things are, right? So this is the evaluation part. But then after that, you're usually expected to improve it or to fix it. If that's a completely separate story, how do you get a neural machine engine to stop making that mistake that you've spotted right now. So I think it's like yin and yang, right? They come together. It's hard to separate them from each other. They're twisted in a way that you can't pull them apart. But you need to have both parts on the team. Somebody figuring out what's wrong, and somebody figuring out how to act on this information, how to actually improve the quality of MT. And this is not a task for a one person team. You literally need an army, a small one perhaps, to actually tackle both sides of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think we really need to collect all this data that we get from the evaluations in order to really understand what we actually need to improve. There are some things that cannot be improved right now, but having all this data will allow us to focus our development efforts into a specific direction. If we see, okay, the main issues are these, or the most frequent issues, and I would say that collecting this data is pretty challenging.
Collecting and probably analyzing, transforming it into something that could be passed to the machine translation specialists who actually improve it. Luna, what is your approach? Because since you have your in-house machine translation engine, you probably have a good bridge between developers of machine translation. How do you transform this feedback that you receive from crowdsourcers, language vendors, your in-house teams, and probably some automated metrics? What can be improved and how?
Right. The machine translation team in Alibaba is actually using different methods to improve the machine translation quality. For example, they will directly constrain MT's output with terminologies. We can customize the output by using technologies like translation intervention or interactive translation, or we can feed high accuracy corpus. Those corpus may focus on a specific domain, and sometimes those are not even standard translations, but transcreations, because that will help the users get more information, and it's more localized, the translation. Those kinds of corpus can be used to train a highly customized machine translation system. And also the machine translation team will provide a set of linguistic rules or features to the engines to improve the translation quality. Yes, that's what we are doing here.
All right. Anna, I know TransPerfect also has internal technology, machine translation technology, and you probably have similar or the same approach. But the question is how to understand, did it improve or not? And as Kirill said, in a cheap and fast way.
Well, we have a big advantage because we have internal linguists who can help us with linguistic evaluation, and also point out the specific issues that they see in the output, right? And they're very experienced in it. So it's a very big difference from just casual MT users who don't know how MT works. Some of the things, of course, that they report we can improve, and some we cannot. But, this is the challenge that I was mentioning before, right? It's seeing the global picture that should help us understand in which direction we should be improving. It can be, terminology or fluency or accuracy and so on. And then how do we measure if it is improved? So I think it's very related to the general question on MT evaluation. We do use automatic metrics, of course, just because often we want to benchmark, different parameters in our systems or specific improvement that we added. But we do try to combine both human and automatic evaluation methods if, the goal is just to improve in general the quality of our systems. In many cases, though, we want to improve specific things. For example, if it's a client of ours who is using our MT and they want to improve the understandability, or they want to include specific terminology and so on, then we're evaluating these specific things.
Anna is making a great point. There's no one size quality measure that fits all, right? So, but by the very definition, what constitutes good translation quality, be it MT or not MT, by the way, is very context dependent, right? You have a specific purpose behind each piece of content, and that determines what's good enough, right? What is high quality? So, for instance, when you're reading a description of an item on one of Alibaba's platforms, you don't necessarily need the same surgical level of precision and accuracy that you would want to find, let's say, in an instruction manual for some kind of a medical device that's used in the operating theater. So obviously you have completely different levels of quality, and different aspects of quality are important at different steps. I actually wanted to latch upon something that Luna has said before and try to generalize this a little bit. So Luna was talking about those custom engines, their training and the customization efforts, and that, you know, Anna was saying that different clients focus on different aspects of quality. What we here at ContentQuo started to feel lately more and more is that managing machine translation engines is becoming very much alike as managing human translation vendors or suppliers, because there's such a large multitude of engines you can be working with at any given time, with all the customized options, with all the engine vendors and whatnot. And you need to figure out who is best at what kind of translations, what aspects of quality they deliver better, where they're maybe performing subpar, right? So we start to see more and more analogies between the world of MT and the world of vendor management, for instance, and lots of good parallels in terms of practices actually emerge from the two. So I was interested to get some feedback from both Anna and Luna. How do you guys see that? Is it similar? Can we borrow stuff from how human vendor managers manage human translators?
That's actually a very good point.
Yeah, this is an interesting observation, and I agree in the sense that we cannot measure all MT providers with one kind of method, just like we wouldn't just say that this vendor or this LSP is better than this. They can be better or worse in different aspects. For example, you know, the ability to customize, the ability to implement or fix specific issues, or the speed even, you know. And of course, the same machine translation system can perform well for some content and worse for other. So yeah, I definitely agree in this sense.
Right, I think, of course, because we are customizing those machine translations for different scenarios, I definitely agree that for, you know, different translation machines, they are good for maybe one scenario, but maybe not so good for another. For example, in Alibaba, we are translating those millions of products online every day. So maybe what's most important for us is that the machine translation can interpret the product name. That's the most important thing we are evaluating here. So yeah, I think that's why we are seeing different kinds of quality mechanisms in this field.
Thank you, guys. Max was right. This is a really hot topic because we are suddenly out of time almost, and there are a lot of questions. I'm scrolling and there is no end. So people have a lot of questions. So I'll probably just take a couple of random ones. It's said that we did not cover something that technology can offer to improve it in a quite different way, improve the machine translation output. But let it be a topic for the third Lock from Home conference. One of the questions that is right now on my screen is actually from Robert, the previous presenter, and it's quite interesting because probably it's one of the main challenges for Luna. Robert asks, what techniques would you recommend to make the source text more suitable for MT? Because, and I think Alibaba, for Alibaba is the most tricky one because it's user-generated content that should be translated. So Luna, what do you do to adapt user-generated content to machine translation?
So this question is about how do we polish the source text so it's more suitable for machine translation, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good question because some of the source texts are not produced by native speakers on Alibaba platforms. So, actually, we don't. I think it's more important for the machine to learn how to interpret those problematic sources and to translate them into proper target text. So that's what we are doing, and the machine translation team is doing a lot of work to help the machine better understand those kinds of special source text. That's what we are doing here.
All right. And yeah, to close our discussion on a positive note, or I don't know how it turns, I know there are a lot of smaller boutique agencies and freelance translators, and there are many questions. They see really experienced machine translation specialists. They always ask, okay, when machine translation quality achieves this human parity, will human translators be removed? And what it is now, human in the loop or machine in the loop? I have seen recently the discussion on Twitter about that. So if you probably share your short thoughts about that, how far it may go with machine translation quality, because obviously you're tending to increase it to a certain level, but what is the impact on people?
I can start maybe. I don't think I can only talk about near future because I don't know what will happen in the faraway future. But I don't think that human translators will be replaced by MT or anything like that. This is something that people used to claim already in the 50s, and the human translators are still here. But I think one important thing that the language specialists have to have nowadays is to be able to adapt to all the technological developments that are happening. And this is not only true for the translation industry, it's true for any industry. So it's staying up to date with the developments, educating yourself, and being adaptable. That's it.
Thank you. Kirill, Luna, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll chime in just for a sec. So at ContentQuo, we're kind of on the intersection between the translation buyers and translation vendors. So we try and look at both sides of the story. So here's what we see. Like Anna, I also will probably focus on the short term. For now, there is definitely no shortage of need of human linguists who are being hired just to look at the output of machine translation, figure out if it's good enough or bad enough, and provide valuable advice either to LSP teams like Anna or to buyer teams like Luna to help them inform their next actions. And in that sense, the role of translator has become even more important. So if you can be in the position where you are the judge of machine translation quality, ultimately you have control over the machine instead of the machine controlling you. So seriously, if you guys want to learn new skills, figure out more about how to do those machine translation quality evaluations, look for jobs perhaps on Alibaba's crowdsourcing platform, always TransPerfect, to try and help provide this kind of crucial input. And then going to the quality topic itself, usual stuff that you guys might have heard about. The MT is quickly becoming much more fluent, and it's actually becoming more difficult to spot the remaining types of quality problems in MT output. In particular, since the semantics of the text and the semantics of the real world are still out of reach for machines. It's actually, humans need to do much more work to find and fix the remaining machine translation errors. So fear not, you guys will always have the opportunity to prove your edge over MT, definitely so in the short-term perspective. That's what we see.
Thank you, Kirill. And Luna, just a final thought before we end, because organizers already nudging me in private messages.
Yeah, I just want to add that I totally agree with Kirill, because we are doing human evaluation on the machine translations. That's what we need to real human translators to do. And also we are feeding coppers to the machines so they can learn how to translate as humans do. So human translation is like the ultimate goal of machine translation, and we are doing what we can to keep improving our machines so we can finally reach that goal. I'm not sure when, but we are doing what we can.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. It was really hot, as Max announced, and it was my pleasure moderating this panel discussion. And yeah, as I promised on Monday on the test run, I'm sure it will be legendary. Yeah, thank you, guys. And dear translators, do not worry, you won't lose your jobs. And the technology is not about that. And thank you, Max. I return you the mic.
Pavel, Anna, Luna, Kirill, thank you very much. It was a great panel discussion.